Officer Brennan's face drained of color as the military ID card revealed Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wilson's SEAL team insignia. The crowd of onlookers gasped when Marcus calmly said, "While you were profiling me, 3 actual suspects just escaped through that exit." The police chief arriving at the scene wasn't smiling. "Before we dive into this shocking story of prejudice and justice, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed racial profiling, and subscribe to hear more stories about everyday heroes standing up against discrimination. Now, let's see how this explosive confrontation began and what happened after the cameras started rolling. Marcus Wilson never expected trouble at Westfield Mall on his first day of leave. At 34 years old, Lieutenant Commander Wilson had survived 4 high-risk deployments with the Navy SEALs, earning multiple commendations for valor. With his muscular 6'2" frame and military-precise haircut, he normally commanded respect. But today, dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and running shoes, he was just another black man shopping for a birthday gift for his mother. The mall bustled with weekend shoppers, families pushing strollers, teenagers huddled around electronics displays, and security guards casually monitoring the crowds. Marcus noticed he was receiving familiar sidelong glances from store employees as he browsed through departments. Despite his distinguished 14-year military career, these suspicious looks were nothing new. "Can I help you find something?" asked the 4th salesperson in less than 30 minutes, with that same artificial smile that never reached their eyes. "I'm just browsing, thank you," Marcus replied with the practiced patience he'd developed over decades of similar interactions. As he walked past an upscale jewelry store, he paused. A delicate silver necklace with a small pearl pendant caught his eye. Exactly what his mother would love. Before he could enter the store, his phone vibrated. His younger sister, Janelle, was calling about tonight's surprise birthday dinner preparations. "Hey sis," Marcus answered, stepping to the side of the walkway to avoid blocking foot traffic. "I'm at the mall now looking at a necklace I think Mom would love." While Marcus was engaged in conversation, a commotion erupted near the food court approximately 50 yards away. Security radios crackled with reports of suspected shoplifters. 3 teenagers described as young males wearing hoodies who had allegedly stolen merchandise from an electronics store. Officer Philip Brennan had been with the Westfield Police Department for 8 years. At 41, he had a reputation among his colleagues for being old school and tough on crime. His record showed 17 civilian complaints for excessive force and racial bias, but all had been dismissed after internal reviews. He was working an off-duty security detail at the mall when the call came through. Brennan immediately scanned the area, his hand instinctively resting on his holster. His gaze landed on Marcus, a black man standing alone, talking on his phone. Without bothering to match Marcus to the actual description of the suspects, Brennan made his approach, his decision already made. Marcus, still on the phone with his sister, felt a rough hand grab his shoulder from behind. "Put the phone down and turn around slowly," Brennan commanded loudly, causing nearby shoppers to stop and stare. "Janelle, I need to call you back," Marcus said calmly, years of combat training keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline now flooding his system. "I said put the phone down," Brennan shouted, his hand now firmly gripping his weapon. Marcus complied, slowly putting his phone in his pocket and turning to face the officer. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, keeping his hands visible. "There's been a theft. You match the description," Brennan stated flatly, though Marcus, wearing neither a hoodie nor carrying any bags, and at least 15 years older than the described teenagers, matched nothing except the color of his skin. "I've been shopping for a gift for my mother. I haven't been near any electronics store," Marcus explained, maintaining eye contact while carefully keeping his hands in view. By now, a small crowd had gathered. Some people had their phones out, recording the interaction. Among them was Jessica Chen, a local journalist who had been covering a string of stories about racial profiling incidents in the area. "ID, now," Brennan demanded, ignoring Marcus's explanation. "My wallet is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly," Marcus narrated his movements, a habit developed from previous similar encounters. "Just hurry up," Brennan snapped, his impatience growing as more onlookers gathered. As Marcus carefully extracted his wallet, a mall security guard approached Brennan and spoke quietly in his ear. The actual suspects had been spotted on the opposite side of the mall, and they looked nothing like Marcus. But Brennan waved the guard away. "I need to confirm you're not involved," he insisted, maintaining his position. Marcus presented his ID, a military identification card clearly showing his rank and status as an active-duty Navy SEAL. For a moment, Brennan's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered, scrutinizing the ID as if looking for flaws. "How do I know this is, real?" Brennan questioned, his tone suggesting disbelief. The crowd murmured, and more phones raised to record the escalating situation. Marcus remained perfectly still, his face betraying no emotion, though inside he felt the familiar burn of indignation. This wasn't his first encounter with law enforcement, prejudice, but it was perhaps the most public. "You can call my commanding officer," Marcus offered. "His contact information is available through military channels. I'm currently on leave after returning from deployment last week." From the gathering crowd, an older white man stepped forward. "Officer, I've been watching this gentleman for the past 20 minutes. He's been shopping peacefully. The announcement said you're looking for teenagers. This man is clearly not a teenager." Brennan turned towards the civilian, his face hardening. "Stay back and mind your own business. This is police work." "It looks like harassment to me," someone called from the crowd, followed by murmurs of agreement. The situation was quickly spiraling beyond Brennan's control. What should have been a routine security response was becoming a public relations nightmare, all captured on dozens of cell phones. Still, his pride wouldn't allow him to back down. "Spread your legs and put your hands against the wall," Brennan ordered, reaching for his handcuffs. Marcus didn't move. "Officer Brennan," he said, reading the nameplate. "I've complied with your requests and provided identification. There's no legal basis for a search or detention. I'm asking you to respect my rights as a citizen." Brennan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, I don't care what fancy ID you have or who you claim to be. You can cooperate now, or we can do this the hard way." The threat hung in the air between them, weighted with centuries of similar confrontations that had ended in tragedy. Marcus calculated his options, aware that any movement could be misinterpreted by a nervous or biased officer. He had faced armed insurgents in foreign territories with less tension than he felt in this American shopping mall. The standoff between Marcus and Officer Brennan had drawn a crowd of at least 30 people. Jessica Chen, the journalist, had begun live streaming the encounter to her news channel's social media page, narrating quietly as the confrontation unfolded. "I won't be placing my hands on any wall," Marcus said evenly. "I've identified myself and complied with reasonable requests. Unless you're formally detaining me with probable cause, I'm free to continue shopping." Brennan's face flushed red. This type of resistance, calm, articulate, and legally sound, clearly wasn't what he expected. He reached for his radio and called for backup, describing a confrontational suspect refusing to comply with police orders. Within minutes, 2 additional officers arrived at the scene. Unlike Brennan, they quickly assessed the situation. A growing crowd of upset witnesses, multiple recording devices, and a composed black man facing an increasingly agitated officer. "What's going on here, Phil?" asked Officer Rivera, the more experienced of the 2 arrivals. "This subject matches the description of the shoplifting suspects and is refusing to cooperate with my investigation," Brennan stated firmly. Marcus addressed Rivera directly. "Officer, I've provided my military ID showing I'm an active-duty Navy SEAL. I've been shopping for a gift for my mother. The announcement described teenage suspects in hoodies. I'm 34 years old wearing a t-shirt. The only thing I match is being black." Rivera glanced between Marcus's calm demeanor and Brennan's rigid stance. The crowd had grown larger, with many openly expressing support for Marcus. "Let me see that ID," Rivera requested, extending his hand. Marcus carefully removed it from his wallet again and handed it over. Rivera examined the ID, his expression shifting as he recognized the significance of the credentials. "Lieutenant Commander Wilson, thank you for your service," he said, returning the ID with noticeably more respect. "It appears there's been a misunderstanding." There's no misunderstanding, Brennan interrupted. He's still a potential suspect until we clear this up downtown. The third officer, a younger woman named Torres, stepped closer to Brennan. The actual suspects have already been apprehended on the north side of the mall, she informed him quietly. Loss prevention confirmed it's 3 white teenagers, just like the original description stated. Despite this information, Brennan seemed unwilling to back down. We still need to complete our investigation here, he insisted. By now, the mall's head of security had arrived, along with the store manager from which the theft had occurred. Officer Brennan, the security chief said, we have confirmation that the individuals responsible have been detained. This gentleman is not involved. The public humiliation was becoming increasingly evident, not for Marcus, who maintained his dignity throughout, but for Brennan, whose mistake was being witnessed by dozens of onlookers and thousands of live-stream viewers. You've been targeting the wrong person while the actual thieves were across the mall, said an elderly woman from the crowd. Is it because he's black? Would you have stopped my grandson the same way? Brennan turned to the crowd, his patience clearly fraying. Everyone needs to disperse. This is police business. It's public discrimination is what it is, someone else called out. Marcus remained perfectly still, knowing that any movement could escalate the situation. His SEAL training had prepared him for high-pressure scenarios, but this kind of confrontation tested different muscles, the restraint to not react when faced with injustice, the discipline to remain calm when every instinct screamed for action. Jessica Chen pushed forward slightly. Officer Brennan, I'm with Channel 7 News. Given that the actual suspects have been apprehended and clearly don't match Lieutenant Commander Wilson's description, what was your basis for detaining him? The question hung in the air, weighted, and dangerous. Before Brennan could respond, the mall's main entrance doors opened, and a uniformed police captain walked in, his face set in a grim expression. Captain James Donovan had received an alert about the livestream situation and had driven directly to the scene. Captain on site, Rivera said, straightening his posture. Brennan's face showed the first signs of genuine concern. Captain Donovan was known for his strict adherence to departmental policies on community relations and had recently implemented additional training on racial bias. What's the situation here? Donovan asked, his experienced eyes taking in the scene, the crowd, the recording devices, the military ID still in Marcus's hand, and his officer's confrontational stance. Before anyone could answer, Marcus spoke. Captain, I was shopping when Officer Brennan approached me, claimed I matched a description of teenage shoplifters, and demanded my ID. Despite providing military identification and explaining I wasn't involved, he's continued to detain me without cause. Meanwhile, I've been informed the actual suspects have already been apprehended elsewhere. Donovan's gaze shifted to the security chief, who nodded in confirmation. The actual perpetrators were caught 10 minutes ago on the north side. 3 teenage boys, all Caucasian, as described in the original alert. The captain turned to Brennan. Officer, secure your equipment and wait for me in the security office. Sir, I was just following protocol for suspicious, Brennan began. That's an order, officer, Donovan cut him off firmly. We'll discuss protocols later. As Brennan reluctantly left, the tension in the air immediately decreased. Captain. Donovan turned to Marcus. Lieutenant Commander Wilson, on behalf of the Westfield Police Department, I apologize for this incident. You're obviously free to go about your business, Marcus nodded, his expression neutral. Thank you, Captain. But the public humiliation had not ended with Brennan's departure. The incident had now been viewed by thousands online, with comments flooding in criticizing the police department and expressing outrage at what many were calling a clear case of racial profiling. Will there be any consequences for this kind of behavior? Jessica Chen asked the captain, her live stream still running. We take all incidents involving our officers seriously, Donovan replied carefully. This will be thoroughly reviewed according to department procedures. The diplomatic answer didn't satisfy many in the crowd, who began to voice their dissatisfaction. The mall's security team started gently dispersing people, encouraging them to continue their shopping. Marcus finally allowed himself to relax slightly, rolling his shoulders to release the tension that had built during the confrontation. What should have been a simple shopping trip had turned into a public spectacle, another moment when his identity as a black man had overshadowed his status as a decorated military officer. "Are you all right, sir?" Officer Torres asked quietly, genuine concern in her voice. "This isn't my first experience with profiling," Marcus replied, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But it never gets easier." As the crowd slowly dispersed, Marcus found himself wondering if he should just leave or continue his shopping as if nothing had happened. The pearl necklace for his mother still waited in the jewelry store, but the joy of the surprise had been tainted by the incident. Jessica Chen approached him, her cameraman hanging back respectfully. "Lieutenant Commander Wilson, would you be willing to share your thoughts about what just happened?" Marcus looked directly into the camera, knowing his response would potentially be seen by thousands. In this moment, he wasn't just speaking for himself but for countless others who had faced similar situations with less fortunate outcomes. For several seconds, Marcus considered the journalist's request, weighing the personal risk of speaking out against the potential impact his words might have. As a military officer, he was trained to be cautious with the media, but as a black man who had just experienced racial profiling, he felt a responsibility to address the issue. "I'll make a brief statement," Marcus finally said, his posture straight and professional. Jessica Chen positioned her microphone, her expression a mix of professional neutrality and personal empathy. The red light on the camera confirmed they were still broadcasting live. "Lieutenant Commander Wilson, can you tell us what happened here today and your reaction to it?" she asked. Marcus took a measured breath. "Today, I experienced something that unfortunately isn't uncommon for Black Americans, regardless of their profession or service to this country. I was racially profiled while shopping for a birthday gift for my mother. Despite clearly not matching the description of teenage suspects, I was confronted, questioned, and nearly detained simply because of how I look." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "As a Navy SEAL, I've sworn to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans. Those rights include equal protection under the law and freedom from unreasonable searches. What happened today wasn't just an insult to me personally, but a reminder that we still have work to do as a nation to live up to our founding principles." The crowd that had begun to disperse now reformed, listening intently. Among them, several veterans had moved closer, their expressions a mixture of anger and solidarity. "What would you like to see happen as a result of this incident?" Jessica prompted. "I would like to see meaningful accountability and change," Marcus responded. "Officer Brennan's actions today weren't just a mistake. They reflect a pattern of behavior that endangers citizens and undermines public trust in law enforcement. I hope the department will take appropriate action, not just for my sake, but for the community's safety and well-being." While Marcus spoke, Captain Donovan remained nearby, listening without interruption. When Marcus finished, the captain stepped forward. "I want to assure Lieutenant Commander Wilson and the public that this incident will be thoroughly investigated," Donovan stated for the camera. "Our department has clear policies against racial profiling, and we take violations of those policies seriously." A middle-aged black woman pushed through the crowd, positioning herself next to Marcus. "I saw everything," she said firmly. "And I've seen this kind of thing happen too many times in this community. We need more than just words from the police department this time." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the onlookers. Marcus noticed that the crowd had become increasingly diverse, with people of various backgrounds now standing together in shared concern. Jessica turned her microphone toward the woman. "Can you tell us your name and what you observed?" "I'm Dr. Patricia Washington, professor of sociology at Westfield University. What I observed was textbook racial profiling. Officer Brennan bypassed multiple individuals who actually matched the suspect description to target Lieutenant Commander Wilson, who matched only in being black." As Dr. Washington spoke, Marcus noticed a group of young black men watching from the periphery of the crowd. Their expressions reflected a familiar mixture of anger, resignation, and exhaustion. For them, this wasn't a surprising incident, but rather a confirmation of daily reality. One of the young men caught Marcus's eye and gave him a subtle nod of respect. Marcus returned the acknowledgement, feeling the weight of representation that often fell on his shoulders as a black man in uniform. "Lieutenant Commander," Jessica continued, As someone who has served our country at the highest levels, what message do you have for other Black Americans who face similar situations? The question struck at the complex duality of Marcus's existence. His pride in serving a country that still, too often, judged him by his skin color rather than his character or contributions. Know your rights and exercise them calmly but firmly, Marcus advised, speaking now more to the watching young men than to the camera. Document everything, support each other, and remember that standing up against injustice is itself a form of patriotism. The America we serve and protect is not perfect, but its founding principles are worth fighting for, both overseas and here at home. The impromptu speech resonated with the crowd, drawing nods and quiet applause. Even Captain Donovan seemed moved, though his professional demeanor remained intact. As the interview concluded, several veterans approached Marcus, offering handshakes and words of solidarity. A retired Marine grasped his hand firmly. "Semper Fi, brother. You handled that with more discipline than most could muster." The sense of community support was powerful, but Marcus couldn't help noticing that Officer Brennan's colleagues seemed divided in their reactions. Some, like Torres, showed clear disapproval of Brennan's actions, while others maintained uncomfortable, neutral expressions that suggested conflicted loyalties. Do you believe racial profiling is still a significant problem in America? Comment number 1. If you think police departments need better training to address racial bias. Or number 2. If you believe incidents like this are isolated problems. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real stories about justice and equality in America. And here's a question to think about. What would have happened if Lieutenant Commander Wilson wasn't a decorated Navy SEAL? Would the outcome have been different for an ordinary civilian? Let's find out what happened next in this incredible confrontation. The mall atmosphere had changed dramatically in the hour following the confrontation. Security guards spoke in hushed tones into their radios. Store employees watched the continuing activity from their doorways, and regular shoppers either hurried past or lingered at a distance, trying to understand what had happened. Marcus finally made his way to the jewelry store where he'd originally spotted the pearl necklace for his mother. The sales associate, a middle-aged white woman who had witnessed the entire incident, greeted him with unmistakable warmth. "Lieutenant, Commander, it would be my honor to help you today," she said, her voice carrying a gentle southern accent. "I believe I know which piece caught your eye earlier." As she retrieved the necklace, Marcus noticed her hands trembling slightly. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked. She paused, meeting his gaze. "My son served in Afghanistan, Marine Corps. What happened to you out there? It just isn't right. Not to anyone, but especially not to someone who's risked their life for this country." Marcus nodded, understanding the complicated emotions behind her words. While he appreciated her support, he also recognized the implicit suggestion that his military service somehow made the injustice more significant than if it had happened to a civilian. "Thank you," he said simply, choosing not to address the complexity in that moment. "The necklace is perfect. My mother will love it." As the associate carefully wrapped the gift, Marcus's phone rang. It was his sister Janelle again, likely wondering why he hadn't called back. He answered, stepping slightly away from the counter. "Marcus, what happened? You just disappeared," Janelle's concerned voice came through. "I'm fine, Jan. There was an incident at the mall. I'll tell you about it when I get home." "What kind of incident?" she pressed, her protective instincts engaged. "Are you okay?" Before Marcus could answer, the sales associate gestured to a television mounted in the corner of the store, now showing footage of the confrontation. Local news had already picked up Jessica Chen's live stream. "I think it's on the news," Marcus said quietly. "I had an encounter with police. Everything's fine now." Janelle's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Marcus, I'm looking at it online right now. This is not fine. That officer, he could have..." Her voice broke. The reality Janelle couldn't bring herself to articulate hung between them, the knowledge that similar encounters had ended tragically for other Black men and women. Even with his training, his status, his calm demeanor, Marcus knew how quickly situations could escalate when fear and bias entered the equation. "I'm okay, Jan, really. I'll be home soon and we can talk then." After completing his purchase, Marcus made his way toward the mall exit, intending to head directly home. The confrontation had drained him more than he wanted to admit, and he needed time to process what had happened away from public scrutiny. As he approached the main doors, however, he noticed a small group waiting for him. 3 young black men, including the one who had nodded to him during the interview. They ranged in age from perhaps 16 to 20, dressed in typical teen attire, jeans, sneakers, hoodies. Lieutenant Commander Wilson, the oldest of the 3, said, stepping forward respectfully, "I'm Jamal. These are my brothers Deshaun and Andre. We saw what happened." Marcus shook each of their hands, noticing their firm grips and direct eye contact. Young men clearly raised to present themselves confidently, despite a world that often misinterpreted such confidence as aggression. "We just wanted to say, thank you," Jamal continued, "for how you handled that. For not backing down but not giving them any excuse either." Deshaun, the youngest at about 16, shifted uncomfortably. "That officer stopped me last month outside the arcade. Wasn't so many people around then. Didn't go so smooth." Marcus nodded, understanding the unspoken details. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, just got roughed up a little. Mom filed a complaint but nothing happened." Andre, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "I'm enlisting next month. Marines." He straightened his posture slightly. "People tell me it'll be different once I'm in uniform, that I'll get respect. But then we see what happened to you and..." He trailed off. The weight of Andre's unfinished thought settled heavily on Marcus. The young man was seeking reassurance that Marcus couldn't honestly provide, that a uniform would shield him from prejudice. Instead, Marcus offered something more valuable: truth. "The uniform doesn't erase racism," Marcus said quietly. "In some ways it makes you more visible, more scrutinized. But it does give you brotherhood, purpose, and skills that can't be taken away. I've faced discrimination in the military too, but I've also found some of the best people I know, of all backgrounds, who judge me only by my abilities and character." Andre absorbed this, then nodded solemnly. "Thank you for being straight with me, sir." "One more thing," Marcus added. "Whatever happens out there, remember that you belong in every space you enter. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise." As the young men walked away, Marcus felt both the burden and privilege of being a role model, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance. He hadn't asked to become an example today, but perhaps his experience would help these young men navigate their own encounters. Outside the mall, the afternoon sun was beginning to lower in the sky. Marcus headed toward his car, keys already in hand, when he noticed Captain Donovan waiting near the entrance. "Lieutenant Commander," Donovan called, "do you have a moment?" Marcus paused, weighing his desire to go home against the potential importance of this conversation. "Yes, Captain." Donovan approached, his body language deliberately casual, non-threatening. "I wanted to speak with you privately, away from the cameras and crowd." "I appreciate that," Marcus replied cautiously. "First, I want to reiterate my apology for Officer Brennan's conduct. It was unprofessional and contrary to our department policies." Marcus nodded, but remained silent, waiting for the substance of what Donovan really wanted to discuss. "The OTI thing is," Donovan continued, lowering his voice, "Brennan has a history of similar complaints, all dismissed due to lack of evidence or witnesses willing to pursue formal charges. And today there's plenty of both," Marcus observed. "Exactly." Donovan looked genuinely troubled. "This incident is going to get attention because of who you are, but the reality is that less prominent citizens face this kind of treatment regularly without recourse." The captain's frankness was unexpected. Marcus studied him, trying to discern his motivation. "What are you asking of me, Captain?" "I'm not asking you to bury this," Donovan clarified quickly. "Quite the opposite. I'm hoping you'll be willing to make a formal complaint and see it through. With your standing and the video evidence, we have a chance to make meaningful change in the department." Now Marcus understood. Donovan was a reformer working within a system resistant to change, looking for leverage. While part of Marcus wanted nothing more than to put this incident behind him, another part recognized the rare opportunity to create institutional accountability. "I'll need to think about it," Marcus replied honestly. "This kind of process can become all-consuming." Donovan nodded. "I understand. But I hope you'll consider it. Here's my direct number." He handed Marcus a business card. "Whatever you decide, I respect your service, Lieutenant Commander, both to our country and to our community today." As Donovan walked away, Marcus stood in the parking lot, feeling the weight of decision. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Navy SEAL racially profiled at Westfield Mall. Footage goes viral. The private incident had become public discourse, whether he wanted it to or not. Marcus got into his car and sat for a moment, collecting his thoughts before driving home. The pearl necklace for his mother sat in a small bag on the passenger seat, a reminder of his original purpose today, now overshadowed by events beyond his control. Marcus pulled into the driveway of his mother's modest two-story home in the Oak Park neighborhood, a historically black community that had remained proudly middle class despite economic pressures. The meticulously maintained garden showed his mother's touch, with early summer flowers blooming in neat rows along the walkway. Before he could even turn off the engine, the front door opened, and his sister Janelle rushed out, followed more slowly by their mother, Elizabeth Wilson. At 62, Elizabeth still moved with grace, though recent arthritis had added a slight stiffness to her gait. "Marcus," Janelle called, reaching the car as he stepped out. She embraced him tightly, as if reassuring herself that he was truly unharmed. At 32, Janelle worked as an assistant district attorney, a career choice influenced by the injustices she had witnessed growing up. "I'm fine, Jan," Marcus reassured her, returning the hug before turning to his mother. "Mom, really? It's okay." Elizabeth Wilson's expression was a complicated mixture of concern, resignation, and barely contained anger. "Let's talk inside," she said simply, her teacher's voice calm but brooking no argument. Inside the comfortable living room with its family photos chronicling decades of achievements and milestones, Marcus sat on the sofa while Janelle paced and their mother took her favorite armchair. "We saw the video," Elizabeth said. "All of it." "It's already been viewed over 100,000 times, Janelle added, holding up her phone to show the climbing numbers on the news website. "They're calling you the SEAL who stood his ground." Marcus winced slightly at the sensationalism. "I was just trying to de-escalate the situation." "By standing up for your rights," his mother noted. "I'm proud of how you handled yourself, son. But I'm also terrified by what could have happened." The room fell silent as the unspoken reality settled over them. Elizabeth Wilson had raised 2 successful black children as a widowed mother in America, an achievement that had required not just love and discipline, but constant vigilance and painful conversations about how to navigate a society where their skin color made them targets. "Did I ever tell you about your father's encounter with police?" Elizabeth asked suddenly. "Just after we were married?" Marcus and Janelle exchanged glances. Their father, Senior Chief Petty Officer James Wilson, had died from cancer when Marcus was 12 and Janelle 10. He had rarely spoken about the discrimination he faced during his 20 years of naval service. "No," Marcus said softly. "He never mentioned it." Elizabeth's eyes grew distant with memory. "It was 1989. Your father was in his dress whites, just back from a 6-month deployment. We were driving to dinner to celebrate when we got pulled over. The officer claimed our taillight was out, but it wasn't." She paused. "When your father presented his military ID, the officer said, and I quote, 'I don't care if you're Admiral of the Navy. To me, you're just another N-word trying to act important.'" Marcus felt a cold anger settle in his chest. "What happened?" "A supervisor arrived and recognized your father from a military appreciation event. Suddenly, the officer was all apologies and, 'Thank you for your service.' But your father was silent the rest of the night." Elizabeth's gaze refocused on her son. "He filed a formal complaint the next day. Nothing came of it, but he said he had to try for the next generation, for you." The revelation landed heavily. Marcus had followed his father into naval service, inspired by his dedication and integrity. Now he understood another dimension of his father's legacy, the battle for respect and dignity he had fought on American soil. Captain Donovan asked me to file a formal complaint, Marcus said. He thinks with the video evidence and my status, it might actually lead to accountability. Janelle stopped pacing. Donovan? I know him from the courthouse. He has a reputation for integrity. If he's asking you to file, he's serious about addressing it. But it would become an even bigger public spectacle, Marcus countered. My name, my service record, everything would be scrutinized. The SEAL teams prefer to operate without publicity. Elizabeth leaned forward. This isn't about the SEALs, Marcus. It's about the fact that a decorated soldier can't even shop for his mother's birthday present without being harassed because of his skin color. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Commander Lewis, his direct superior. The news had clearly reached Naval Command. I need to take this, he said, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. Commander Wilson, he answered formally. Marcus, Commander Lewis's voice was concerned rather than official. I just saw the news. Are you all right? Yes, sir. The situation was resolved without escalation. Good, Lewis paused. The brass is aware of the incident. There's some concern about potential media attention. Marcus tensed. Sir, I didn't seek publicity. I was simply defending my rights as a citizen. And you did so admirably, Lewis assured him quickly. That's not the issue. The concern is about potential blowback. These situations can get politically charged, and there are those who might try to paint you as anti-law enforcement or use your status for their own agendas. The implication was clear. A military officer becoming the center of a racial controversy created complications for the chain of command. Marcus chose his next words carefully. With respect, Commander, I didn't ask to be profiled today. But now that it's happened, I have to respond according to my conscience, as both a naval officer and a Black American. There was a long pause on the line. I understand, Marcus. For what it's worth, you have my personal support. Just proceed with awareness of the potential ramifications and keep me informed. Yes, sir. Thank you. When Marcus returned to the living room, Janelle was showing their mother something on her laptop. You need to see this, she said, turning the screen toward him. It was a news article from 3 months earlier about a lawsuit against the Westfield Police Department. A Black teenager named Darius Jackson had been severely beaten during an arrest for matching the description of a robbery suspect. The actual perpetrator, later determined to be a white man, was apprehended days later. The officer involved in the excessive force incident was Philip Brennan. This is the same officer, Janelle said, her legal mind already connecting the dots. And there are at least 2 other similar cases pending. This isn't isolated, Marcus. It's a pattern. The revelation crystallized Marcus's decision. This wasn't just about his experience anymore. It was about Darius Jackson, about Deshaun who got roughed up with no witnesses, and about countless others who had faced similar treatment without the protection of rank or viral videos. I'm filing the complaint, Marcus said resolutely, and I'm going to see it through, whatever it takes. Elizabeth nodded, pride visible in her eyes. Your father would approve. Janelle, ever the prosecutor, was already in strategic mode. We need to document everything while it's fresh. I'll help you prepare the statement. As they began the process, Marcus reflected on how quickly life could change. This morning, he had been simply a son planning a surprise for his mother's birthday. Now, he had become a reluctant symbol in a struggle far larger than himself. The pearl necklace, still in its bag, sat forgotten on the entry table, a reminder of the ordinary life that had been interrupted by an all-too-familiar injustice. By the following morning, the incident had exploded across national media. Marcus woke to dozens of missed calls, hundreds of social media notifications, and news vans parked at the end of his mother's street. The viral video had been viewed millions of times overnight, with hashtags like #SunSeals Racism and Stand With Marcus trending nationwide. This is insane, Marcus muttered, scanning through the notifications on his phone while peering through the blinds at the media presence. Outside, Janelle had stayed overnight, sleeping in her childhood bedroom. She appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, already dressed in a professional suit despite it being Saturday. I made coffee. and I've already received calls from 3 civil rights organizations offering legal support. I don't need an army of lawyers, Marcus said. This should be straightforward. File the complaint, present the evidence, hold Brennan accountable. Janelle gave him a look that mixed sympathy with experienced pragmatism. Nothing involving police misconduct is ever straightforward, Marcus, especially when it gains this much attention. As if to prove her point, Marcus's phone rang with a call from an unlisted number. He answered cautiously. Lieutenant Commander Wilson, this is Mayor Robert Hayes. I was hoping we could meet today to discuss yesterday's unfortunate incident. Marcus raised an eyebrow at Janelle, who immediately recognized the significance of the mayor's personal involvement. Good morning, Mayor. Hayes. I appreciate your concern, but I've already decided to file a formal complaint through the proper channels. And I respect that decision, Hayes replied smoothly. But I believe we could resolve this matter more efficiently in a private meeting, perhaps with Chief Bennett, Captain Donovan, and myself. We take these matters very seriously. The subtext was clear. The city administration wanted to handle this quietly, away from media scrutiny. Marcus had seen similar tactics during his military career when potentially embarrassing incidents were contained through administrative maneuvering. With respect, sir, private resolutions tend to address individual incidents rather than systemic problems. Officer Brennan has a documented history of similar behavior that needs to be addressed transparently. There was a pause on the line. I understand your position, Lieutenant Commander. Please know that my door remains open if you reconsider. After ending the call, Marcus turned to Janelle. The mayor wants to handle this efficiently behind closed doors. Not surprising, she replied. A decorated Navy SEAL being racially profiled creates terrible optics for the city. They'll try everything to make this go away quietly. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Officer Brennan has a wife and 3 kids. This witch hunt could destroy his career. Is that what a military officer does to another man in uniform? Think about the bigger picture. He showed the message to Janelle, who immediately took the phone. This is intimidation. We need to document everything. She took a screenshot and then asked, Are you reconsidering? Not at all, Marcus replied firmly. But I am concerned about potential blowback, especially from within the police department. His concern proved warranted when, later that morning, they attempted to leave the house to file the formal complaint. 2 police cruisers were parked directly behind Marcus's car, effectively blocking him in. When Marcus approached, an officer he didn't recognize rolled down his window. Sorry for the inconvenience, sir. We're providing security due to the media presence, Captain's orders. We didn't request security, Marcus pointed out, and you're blocking my driveway. Just following orders, sir. If you need to go somewhere, we'd be happy to escort you. The tactic was transparent, surveillance disguised as protection, with the added benefit of monitoring Marcus's movements. It was a technique he had seen used in foreign operations, not something he expected on American soil. We'll take my car, Janelle said, leading Marcus to her vehicle parked on the street. The police cruisers immediately started their engines. As they drove toward the police headquarters, Janelle took a circuitous route, making sudden turns and doubling back occasionally, tactics to identify and potentially lose surveillance. The police cruisers maintained their distance but stayed consistently in their vicinity. They're sending a message, Marcus observed. They want us to know we're being watched. It's also intimidation, Janelle added. Most civilians would be too intimidated to proceed with a complaint under these circumstances. When they arrived at police headquarters, they found another obstacle. The clerk at the front desk informed them that the office that handled civilian complaints was closed for weekend maintenance and would reopen Monday. Convenient timing, Janelle muttered. This is why I told you this wouldn't be straightforward. As they turned to leave, they found themselves face to face with Officer Torres, who had been present during the mall incident. Lieutenant Commander Wilson, she said, her voice low. If you have a moment, I'd like to speak with you privately. Curiosity piqued, Marcus followed Torres to a quiet corner of the lobby, while Janelle watched vigilantly from a distance. I want you to know that not everyone in the department supports Brennan's actions, Torres said quietly. Some of us have been trying to report his behavior for years, But complaints disappear, witnesses change their stories, and evidence goes missing. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked. "Because you have what most victims of Brennan don't: public attention, unquestionable credibility, and the resources to fight back." Torres glanced around nervously. "There's a group of officers who would be willing to provide testimony about previous incidents if you pursue this complaint." "That could put your careers at risk," Marcus observed. Torres nodded grimly. "Yes, but this job is about protecting people, not covering for officers who abuse their power. If you file your complaint on Monday, you might find more support inside the department than you expect." Before Marcus could respond, Torres walked away, maintaining the appearance of a brief, casual interaction. Janelle approached immediately after. "What was that about?" "Potential allies," Marcus replied thoughtfully. "It seems the department isn't as unified behind Brennan as they want us to believe." As they left the building, they noticed Jessica Chen, the journalist from the mall, waiting near their car. "Lieutenant Commander," she called, "do you have a moment?" Marcus hesitated. Media involvement could amplify pressure on the department, but it could also spin the narrative in unpredictable ways. "Ms. Chen," he acknowledged, "I appreciate your interest, but I don't have any additional comments at this time." "I'm not here for a statement," she replied. "I've received information you should be aware of. The department has begun an internal review, but they're focusing on your behavior during the incident, not Officer Brennan's. They're building a counter-narrative claiming you were confrontational and uncooperative." Janelle stepped forward. "That's absurd. The video clearly shows otherwise." "Yes," Jessica agreed. "But they're interviewing select witnesses who were standing at angles where they couldn't see everything clearly. They're constructing a case that the video doesn't tell the whole story." The revelation was both infuriating and unsurprising. Marcus had encountered similar tactics during military investigations, the reframing of events to protect institutional interests rather than pursue truth. "Why are you sharing this information?" Marcus asked directly. "Because I've been covering police misconduct in this city for 3 years," Jessica answered. "I've seen promising cases buried too many times. This might be the one that finally leads to actual change. But only if you're prepared for how dirty this fight could get." "Do you think the police department's attempt to discredit Marcus is typical of how the system protects its own?" Comment number 1 if you believe this kind of institutional self-protection is common, or number 2 if you think most departments would handle this situation more fairly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more stories about brave individuals standing up to injustice. Now, what would you do if you were in Marcus's position? Back down in the face of growing pressure, or push forward despite the risks? Let's see how our Navy SEAL handles this escalating battle. Sunday morning brought rain to Westfield, a steady downpour that kept the media vans at a distance but didn't disperse them entirely. Inside Elizabeth Wilson's home, an impromptu strategy session had formed. Marcus and Janelle were joined by Dr. Patricia Washington, the sociology professor who had spoken up at the mall, and Michael Tanner, a civil rights attorney who had reached out through mutual connections. "They're using classic Darvo tactics," Tanner explained, referring to a common strategy used by accused parties: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. By Monday, they'll have witness statements suggesting you were somehow threatening or non-compliant, despite what the video clearly shows. Marcus sat silently, processing this information while the others discussed legal strategies. His military training had prepared him for many types of conflict, but this was different. A battle fought with narratives and institutional power rather than weapons and tactics. "Lieutenant Commander," Dr. Washington addressed him directly, "you need to understand what your case represents symbolically. For many in our community, you embody the contradiction that exposes systemic racism most clearly. A black man who has reached the pinnacle of service and achievement, yet still faces the same discriminatory treatment as any other black person." "I'm aware of the symbolism," Marcus replied, "but my focus is on holding one specific officer accountable for his actions. I'm not looking to become the face of a movement." Dr. Washington's expression was sympathetic but firm. "That choice may not be yours to make anymore. Symbols aren't self-selected. They're created by collective recognition of meaning. Whether you intended it or not, your confrontation with Officer Brennan has become meaningful to people far beyond Westfield. As if to illustrate her point, Marcus's phone buzzed with a notification. His SEAL teammate Carlos Rodriguez had sent a link to a crowdfunding page titled, "Stand with Lieutenant Commander Wilson Legal Defense Fund." It had already raised over $50,000. "I didn't authorize this," Marcus said, showing the others. "It's happening, with or without your authorization," Tanner observed. "People want to help, and they recognize that fighting the system requires resources." The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Elizabeth answered to find Andre, the young man who had told Marcus about his plans to join the Marines, standing nervously on the porch. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am," he said politely. "I need to speak with Lieutenant Commander Wilson if possible. It's important." Elizabeth showed him in, and Marcus greeted him with concern. "Andre? What's going on?" "It's about Officer Brennan," Andre said, his voice tense. "After what happened at the mall, my brother Deshaun told his friends about how Brennan had roughed him up last month. Word spread, and now other kids are coming forward with similar stories." Andre pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a private social media group where teenagers were sharing their experiences with Brennan. The accounts were disturbingly similar, minor infractions or simply matching descriptions, leading to aggressive confrontations, particularly with young Black and Latino males. "Some of these kids are too scared to make official reports," Andre explained. "They don't trust the system, but they wanted you to know you're not alone." Marcus scrolled through the messages, each one fueling a controlled anger in his chest. One post particularly caught his attention, a 16-year-old describing how Brennan had planted evidence during a stop and frisk. If true, it went beyond racial profiling to outright criminal misconduct. "We need to verify these accounts," Janelle said, her prosecutor's mind already considering how these testimonies might fit into a larger case. Andre nodded. "That's why I came. My mom's a counselor at the community center. She's offered to create a safe space for these kids to talk if any official investigators want to hear their stories." This unexpected development added a new dimension to the situation. What had begun as a personal stand against discrimination now potentially involved protecting vulnerable young people from a pattern of abuse. "Thank you for bringing this to us, Andre," Marcus said, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. This took courage. After Andre left, the strategy discussion took on greater urgency. The case was evolving from a single incident of racial profiling to evidence of potentially systematic misconduct by Officer Brennan. "This changes our approach," Tanner advised. "If we can document a pattern of behavior targeting minors, particularly from marginalized communities, we can push for a Department of Justice investigation, not just an internal review." As they discussed next steps, Marcus's phone rang again, Commander Lewis for the second time in 2 days. "Wilson," Marcus answered, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. "Marcus, I've been instructed to inform you that your leave is being cut short," Lewis said without preamble. "You're needed for a training exercise. Report to base tomorrow at 0800. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. "Sir, with respect, my leave was approved through Friday. The paperwork is all in order." "This comes from higher up than me, Marcus," Lewis replied, his voice conveying both apology and warning. "Operational requirements supersede approved leave." Marcus understood the subtext immediately. Someone with influence had decided that removing him from Westfield would defuse the situation. It was a tactical move to undermine his ability to file the complaint in person and maintain momentum. "I understand, sir," Marcus replied neutrally. "I'll make arrangements." When he returned to the living room and explained the situation, Janelle was furious. "They can't do that. It's blatant interference." "Actually, they can," Marcus corrected her. "Military orders supersede civilian matters." "We can still file the complaint in your absence," Tanner assured him. "Your presence would be powerful, but it's not legally required." Marcus considered his options carefully. As a SEAL, he had taken an oath to follow lawful orders and maintain the chain of command. Throughout his career, he had done so without question, even when it required personal sacrifice. But he had also sworn to protect the Constitution against All enemies, foreign and domestic. The question now was which duty took precedence in this situation. If I disobey orders, even questionable ones, I'm risking my military career, Marcus said slowly. But if I comply, I'm allowing outside influence to interfere with a legitimate civilian complaint process. The room fell silent as everyone recognized the gravity of his dilemma. It was Elizabeth who finally spoke, her voice carrying the wisdom of a woman who had watched her husband navigate similar tensions between military duty and moral obligation. Your father used to say that the uniform represents America's highest ideals, not its worst instincts, she said. He believed that sometimes protecting those ideals meant making difficult choices. Marcus nodded, his decision crystallizing. I need to make a phone call. He stepped outside onto the back porch, the rain creating a natural sound barrier for privacy. He dialed not Commander Lewis, but Captain James Henderson, his former commanding officer and mentor who had recently been promoted to the Pentagon. Captain Henderson, came the familiar gruff voice. Sir, it's Marcus Wilson. I apologize for contacting you on a Sunday, but I'm facing a situation that requires your counsel. I've been following the news, son, Henderson replied. I figured I might hear from you. Marcus explained the sudden recall order and its suspicious timing. Sir, I believe this is an attempt to interfere with a legitimate civilian legal process using military authority as leverage. Henderson was silent for a long moment before responding. That's a serious allegation, Marcus. Yes, sir. Which is why I wanted to speak with someone I trust before taking any action. What are you considering? Henderson asked cautiously. I'm considering requesting an emergency leave extension through proper channels, citing the need to participate in an ongoing civil rights investigation. If denied, I would need to choose between following potentially compromised orders or standing my ground as a citizen. Henderson sighed heavily. Marcus, you're one of the finest officers I've ever commanded. Whatever you decide, make sure it's something you can live with, both as a SEAL and as a man. The conversation ended without explicit direction, but Marcus had received the counsel he needed. Henderson hadn't told him what to do, but he had affirmed that this was a matter of personal integrity as much as military obligation. When Marcus returned inside, his expression was resolute. I'm staying until the complaint is formally filed and my statement is recorded. I'll deal with the consequences afterward. The decision was made, but its implications were profound. For the first time in his distinguished military career, Marcus was preparing to challenge what he believed to be an improper use of command authority. The personal risk was enormous: potential disciplinary action, damage to his service record, even dishonorable discharge in the worst case. But as he looked around at the people gathered to support him, his family, newfound allies, and the invisible presence of all those who had shared their stories through Andre, Marcus knew he was making the only choice his conscience would allow. The storm outside continued unabated, a fitting metaphor for the gathering forces aligned both against and behind Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wilson. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and mounting tension. News of Marcus's decision to challenge his recall orders had somehow leaked to the media, adding another dimension to the already complex narrative. Headlines ranged from SEAL defies, orders to fight racism, to Navy officer abandons duty for political statement. Marcus, dressed in civilian clothes rather than his uniform, prepared to leave for the police headquarters where he would formally file his complaint. His phone had been ringing constantly, military superiors, media outlets, and even politicians seeking to involve themselves in what had become a national story. Are you ready for this? Janelle asked as they prepared to leave. She had taken a personal day from the district attorney's office to accompany him. As ready as I'll ever be, Marcus replied, his expression betraying none of the anxiety he felt about the potential consequences to his military career. As they stepped outside, they were surprised to find not just the expected media presence, but a gathering of at least 50 community members. Among them were Andre and his brothers, Dr. Washington, and many others who had learned of Marcus's scheduled appearance through social media. We're here to walk with you, Andre explained, to show that you're not standing alone. The gesture was unexpected and powerful, What had begun as a solitary incident of discrimination had evolved into a community movement. Marcus felt both humbled by the support and conscious of the responsibility it represented. The short drive to police headquarters took on the atmosphere of a procession, with supporters walking alongside Marcus's car and media vehicles following behind. When they arrived, they found another surprise waiting: a group of police officers standing outside the building. For a moment, Marcus tensed, wondering if this was a show of force meant to intimidate him. But as he approached, he recognized Officer Torres among them. These weren't officers assembled to block his entry. They were Brennan's colleagues who had decided to break the blue wall of silence. "We're here to stand for accountability," Torres said simply when Marcus reached them. "What happened to you was wrong, and it's not the first time." Inside the building, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Captain Donovan personally greeted Marcus, leading him to the Internal Affairs office where he would file his formal complaint. The process was meticulous: a detailed written statement, recorded oral testimony, and submission of all evidence, including the viral video and witness contacts. As Marcus completed the paperwork, the door opened, and Chief Bennett entered, accompanied by Mayor Hayes. Their unexpected appearance immediately changed the dynamic in the room. "Lieutenant Commander Wilson," the chief began formally, "before you submit that complaint, I'd like to offer an alternative resolution." Janelle stepped forward protectively. "My brother has already decided to proceed with the formal complaint, Chief Bennett." The chief nodded acknowledgement, but continued addressing Marcus directly. "I understand and respect that decision. However, I want to assure you that we take these matters extremely seriously. Officer Brennan has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." "That's standard procedure," Marcus observed. "It doesn't address the systematic issues that allowed an officer with 17 previous complaints to continue patrolling." Mayor Hayes cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Commander, we're prepared to implement immediate reforms in response to this incident. Implicit bias training, community oversight committees, body camera policy revisions. We want to work with you, not against you." The offer was clearly designed to be attractive enough to consider withdrawing the complaint, thereby avoiding the public scrutiny of a formal investigation. Marcus recognized the political calculation behind it, the administration wanting to appear proactive rather than reactive. "With respect, Mayor Hayes," Marcus replied, "reforms announced under pressure tend to be implemented half-heartedly and abandoned when attention fades. This isn't about negotiating policy changes in exchange for silence." The mayor's expression hardened slightly. "I'm also obligated to inform you that we've received communication from your chain of command. Your presence here rather than reporting, as ordered, could have serious repercussions for your military career." The statement was delivered as concern, but landed as a threat. Marcus felt a familiar combat clarity settling over him, the focused calm that came in moments of critical decision. "My oath as an officer is to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic," Marcus stated, evenly. "That includes defending equal protection under the law for all citizens. I don't see a conflict between my duties as a serviceman and my responsibilities as a citizen." Before either the chief or mayor could respond, a commotion arose from the lobby. Raised voices echoed down the hallway, growing louder as they approached. The door burst open to reveal Officer Brennan, red-faced and clearly agitated, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit who was attempting to restrain him. "This is a witch hunt!" Brennan shouted upon seeing Marcus. 20 years on the force, risking my life every day, and I'm crucified over one interaction with someone who didn't follow simple instructions." Chief Bennett moved quickly to intervene. "Officer Brennan, you are not authorized to be here. You were explicitly ordered to avoid contact with Lieutenant Commander Wilson." "I have the right to face my accuser," Brennan insisted, shrugging off his companion's restraining hand. "This whole thing is being blown out of proportion by the media and political opportunists." Marcus remained perfectly still, maintaining the same composed demeanor he had shown during their original confrontation at the mall. Brennan's outburst was revealing, not just his anger, but his genuine belief that his actions had been justified. "Officer Brennan," Marcus said quietly, causing the room to fall silent. "This isn't about one interaction. This is about a pattern of behavior documented across multiple incidents, involving multiple citizens, many of them minors. Brennan's expression shifted from anger to confusion. What are you talking about? What minors? We've collected testimonies from 17 young people who have had encounters with you over the past 2 years, Marcus continued. All describe similar experiences of being targeted without cause, subjected to excessive force, or intimidated into compliance. This information clearly caught Brennan off guard. He turned to Chief Bennett. This is ridiculous. They're making things up to pile on now that I'm down. The chief's expression was grim. We've already begun reviewing these allegations, Philip. Body camera footage from several of these incidents appears to corroborate their accounts. For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Brennan's face. The man in the suit, presumably his lawyer, leaned in to whisper urgently in his ear. I've always followed department procedures, Brennan insisted, though his voice had lost some of its conviction. Everything I've done has been by the book. That's precisely the problem, Marcus replied. If your actions have been within procedure, then the procedures themselves need to change. Either way, accountability is necessary. The confrontation represented a pivotal moment, not just between Marcus and Brennan, but between competing visions of policing and community relations. In Brennan's worldview, his authority was self-justifying beyond question or critique. In Marcus's perspective, that authority derived from public trust and constitutional principles, both of which required continuous accountability. Chief Bennett finally took control of the situation. Officer Brennan, you are leaving now, or you will face additional disciplinary charges. This is neither the time nor the place for this discussion. As Brennan was escorted out, his parting words hung in the air. You have no idea what it's like out there. None of you do. When the door closed behind him, Marcus turned back to the complaint form, signing his name with steady hands. The formal process had begun, but the real work of reform, addressing the cultures, policies, and practices that enabled officers like Brennan, would require sustained commitment beyond this single filing. Lieutenant Commander, Captain, Donovan said as Marcus handed over the completed documents. I want you to know that many officers in this department share your concerns about accountability. Change is never easy, but it's overdue. The statement was a reminder that institutions weren't monoliths. They contained individuals with diverse perspectives, including those who recognized the need for transformation from within. As Marcus and Janelle prepared to leave, Marcus's phone rang again. The caller ID showed it was military command. The moment of reckoning for his decision to delay reporting had arrived. Marcus answered the call as he stepped outside the police headquarters, where the gathered crowd had grown considerably. News of his confrontation with Brennan had somehow already spread, drawing more community members and media. Lieutenant Commander Wilson, came the stern voice of Admiral Thomas Richardson, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm calling to address your failure to report as ordered. Yes, Admiral, Marcus replied, maintaining military protocol despite the circumstances. I've reviewed the situation thoroughly, Richardson continued. Your commanding officer has been relieved of duty pending investigation into improper use of military authority for civilian interference. The statement caught Marcus completely off guard. Sir, we've received evidence that your recall orders were issued following direct pressure from civilian authorities in Westfield, not due to operational requirements. The Navy does not allow its chain of command to be manipulated for local political purposes, Lieutenant Commander. Relief washed over Marcus, followed immediately by concern for Commander Lewis, who had likely been passing along orders he himself had received from above. Sir, Commander Lewis was simply relaying the orders he received. I don't believe he was personally involved in any impropriety. That will be determined through proper channels, the Admiral replied. Your leave status has been reinstated through Friday as originally approved. Furthermore, you are hereby authorized to participate in any legal proceedings related to this matter as a private citizen. The Navy neither endorses nor opposes your actions in this regard, but we will not interfere with your constitutional rights. Thank you, Admiral, Marcus said, the weight of potential career destruction lifting from his shoulders. One more, thing, Wilson, Richardson added, his tone softening slightly. Off the record, what happened to you at that mall was wrong. The uniform doesn't protect us from prejudice, but it shouldn't prevent us from standing against it either. After the call ended, Marcus stood for a moment on the steps of the police headquarters, processing everything that had transpired over the past 3 days. What had begun as a simple shopping trip had evolved into something that would likely reshape not just his life, but potentially his community. Janelle approached, concern evident in her expression. What did they say? Are you in trouble? Just the opposite, Marcus replied, still somewhat stunned. My leave has been reinstated. It seems someone tried to use military channels to interfere with a civilian matter, and the Navy isn't having it. The news spread quickly through the crowd, generating cheers and applause. Marcus raised his hands, gesturing for quiet. Despite the overwhelming support, he felt it important to clarify his position. I want to thank everyone who has stood with me through this, he began. But I need to be clear about something. This was never about me against the police. This was about ensuring that the principles of equal justice and dignity that I've sworn to defend overseas are equally protected here at home. He scanned the diverse crowd that had gathered, community members of all ages and backgrounds, journalists documenting the moment, the group of police officers led by Torres who had chosen accountability over blind loyalty, and young people, like Andre, who were watching closely to see if the system could actually work for them. Officer Brennan will face a formal investigation, and the department has committed to reviewing its policies and training procedures. But real change doesn't happen through a single complaint or policy revision. It happens when communities stay engaged, when officers committed to justice speak up, and when we all recognize that accountability strengthens rather than weakens our institutions. The impromptu speech resonated with the gathered crowd, sparking a renewed sense of purpose. What could have ended with the filing of a complaint was instead becoming the beginning of a community-wide effort for sustainable reform. Among those, listening attentively, was Jessica Chen, who approached Marcus as he concluded. Lieutenant Commander, would you be willing to share what happens next? People across the country are following your story, and it's giving them hope that change is possible. Marcus considered the request carefully. He had never sought the spotlight, but he recognized that transparency would be crucial to maintaining momentum. I'll share updates as appropriate, Ms. Chen, but the focus should remain on the issues, not on me personally. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of Marcus's stand continued to spread. The investigation into Officer Brennan uncovered a pattern of misconduct that eventually led to his termination and criminal charges related to evidence tampering in cases involving minority suspects. Several of his previous cases were reopened for review, bringing long-delayed justice to those who had been wrongfully targeted. Captain Donovan, with support from reform-minded officers like Torres, implemented comprehensive changes to departmental training and accountability measures. Body camera policies were strengthened, with clear penalties for deactivation during civilian encounters. An independent civilian oversight board was established, with Dr. Washington among its inaugural members. For Marcus personally, the experience transformed his understanding of service. When his leave ended, he returned to his SEAL team with a renewed commitment to the constitutional principles he had sworn to uphold. His fellow operators, far from judging his actions, expressed respect for his moral courage in confronting injustice on home soil. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his dress uniform before a classroom of police cadets at the newly reformed Westfield Police Academy. Captain Donovan had invited him to speak about ethics, accountability, and community relations. The authority you will soon carry comes with extraordinary responsibility, Marcus told the diverse group of trainees. Your badge and weapon aren't symbols of power over citizens, but tools entrusted to you by those same citizens for their protection. True strength isn't found in intimidation or control, but in the trust you build with the communities you serve. Among the cadets, Marcus spotted a familiar face, Andre, who had followed through on his plan to enlist in the Marines and had now returned to pursue a career in law enforcement. Their eyes met in mutual respect, a symbol of how individual choices could contribute to generational change. After the lecture, Marcus visited his mother, bringing her the pearl necklace that had been momentarily forgotten amid the tumult following. his mall encounter. Though belated, the birthday celebration was especially meaningful, with Elizabeth Wilson beaming with pride, not just in her son's military accomplishments, but in his moral stand when tested. "Your father would be so proud," she said as she fastened the necklace, "not just because you stood up, but because you did it with dignity and purpose." The Brennan incident, as it came to be known locally, had not solved the deep-rooted problems of racial bias in policing. No single case could. But it had created openings for reform that might otherwise have remained closed, empowered voices that might have stayed silent, and reminded everyone involved that systems only change when people within them demand better. For Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wilson, the experience reinforced what his military service had already taught him, that protecting American values sometimes required courage, not just in the face of foreign threats, but in confronting domestic failures to live up to those same ideals. The uniform he wore and the civilian identity he carried were not in conflict but in harmony, both dedicated to the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. What did you think of Marcus's story? Was his stand against racial profiling inspiring to you? Comment below with your thoughts on how communities and police can work together to address bias. If you believe more people should hear stories like this one, please like, subscribe, and share this video with friends and family. Every view helps spread awareness of these important issues. Thank you for watching, and remember that change begins with individuals willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. This powerful story of Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wilson teaches us that systemic racism persists regardless of one's achievements or service to the country. It shows that courage comes in many forms, sometimes in combat zones overseas and sometimes on American soil standing up for constitutional rights. True integrity means upholding principles even when personally costly. The story reminds us that change requires both individual courage and collective action. One person's stand, when supported by community and allies within the system, can create openings for meaningful reform. It demonstrates that accountability strengthens rather than weakens our institutions. Most importantly, we learn that silence perpetuates injustice. Whether it's Marcus filing his complaint, Torres breaking the blue wall, or young people sharing their experiences, speaking truth to power is essential for progress. Marcus's journey shows that confronting racism isn't about being against law enforcement, but about ensuring equal justice for all. His dual identity as both a decorated SEAL and a Black American highlights that patriotism includes holding America accountable to its highest ideals, not just defending it against external threats.